I don't speak French.
What is that?
It's a camera.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello. Happy day now.
Going out for a nice skate to downtown Montreal. And I'm gonna talk today a little bit about what it's like and how to properly write a training program for skating specifically, but I do think it has a lot of carryover value to other sports. If you just think about what you're doing and what you're training for, as opposed to just doing things that have always been that way or you saw somebody do it once. So what I mean by that is oftentimes, and especially if you're new to a sport, you'll go on YouTube and you're just thirsty for drills. You're just looking for something to do that a good person does or a person that is accomplished does that you can do and replicate that, and that's better than nothing for sure. However, there's a pretty small chance that you're gonna get very far with just doing that alone, and that's obvious. That's why we have good coaches, good programs that you try to be a part of to grow your ability in a way that makes sense. So if you're by yourself, or even if you have a coach and you want to understand the process a little bit more, or you're a coach and you want to understand the process, at least my process a little more, that's what you're gonna learn here about how I look at training programs, how I look at physiology, how I tackle problems or shortcomings in myself as an athlete, and being able to identify them and giving a little bit of a grand scheme, zoomed out view of the big picture of what I think is important when considering a well-rounded training program. So we'll start off by saying that the number one thing that you pretty much have to have in a training program if your sport is difficult, whether that be physically or mentally, is it has to be challenging a good amount of the time. And you have to be able to overcome tasks and build tenacity in your training to be resilient in racing. For example, when it comes to speed skating, and that being inline, long track, short track, whatever, it doesn't matter. So it needs to be hard. It needs to be challenging. That's a requirement. It doesn't need to be hard and challenging all the time. That's the tricky part, is balancing how hard do I work, how often, is essentially the magic of somebody who understands how to write a program and who doesn't. Because it's easy to go hard. It's easy to write things down or create an entire program without a long-term plan of just things that are difficult and challenging. That requires almost zero skill. However, figuring out where and when and implementing difficult tasks with a certain degree of specificity for whatever you're training for is also very important. So we know it needs to be difficult. I just touched on specificity as well, meaning you have to train a good amount for what you're actually trying to get better at. I'll give you an example. If I am a new skater and I want to be a marathon guy and I want to be able to win marathons, and all I ever do is go out and blister a speed that is pretty respectable, meaning I go out and I skate 25 miles an hour for 20 miles. And I do that again and again and again. But I never practice a sprint. Then I'm gonna lose the majority of those races because most races come down to a field sprint. And if you're racing anybody respectable, they're gonna stay with you and they're gonna beat you in that field sprint. And you probably don't practice sprinting because you don't really enjoy it. And that's where having a good coach or somebody that you trust in, confide in, helps you along that journey, because they encourage you to do the things that you're not comfortable with or the things that you don't really particularly enjoy right now, but you eventually will once you grow into being a more well-rounded athlete because you have a good training program. For sure, people don't like doing things they're not good at. That's probably me to a T. If you were to describe my personality type, I do not like doing things that I'm not just naturally good at, usually. But I will work on things once I identify that and see the big picture. And it's very motivating for me, like I said, to zoom out and see where I am, where I'm trying to go. So, it needs to be difficult, for sure, but not difficult all the time and not too difficult. It needs to be specific. What's up, man? You guys meeting up here for a ride? No, you just...
I'm actually waiting for the green light.
Oh, nice. See you later. Enzo, one of the boys on the short track team. So you can see my ADD. The second I saw him, I stopped talking about what I was talking about. You probably see it on my face, but where was I? All right, so it needs to be specific, but not specific all the time. Meaning you have to do some parts of your training that are just generalized fitness and building a base and things of that nature. And then once you have that scope of those few pieces that are really the core requirements, in my opinion, then you start asking yourself, what am I trying to be good at? And I touched on that with the marathon example. What do I want to be good at? If I am a coach and I'm coaching, for example, kids that are probably younger than 18 years old, we're training for everything. I don't care what they say. We're going to make them well-rounded athletes, and then later they can choose to specify if they'd like. But if I'm a coach, I'm not giving the athlete the option at a young age, because oftentimes we don't know what somebody's going to be until they get all the way through puberty, and we can kind of get a good understanding of what their body can and can't do. Because at a young age, it's just what they want or don't want to do, usually. But they can do everything. They're just either good at it or they're not good at it. But we don't know what the body's going to develop into yet, usually, in my experience. And there may be some exceptions to that, but I always still stick to my guns and try to train every athlete to be well-rounded and at least have a skill set for every distance. And that's very doable, especially with a group. So if I want to be good at all the races for inline, for example, I would sit down and write down every race that I'll be racing, indoor, outdoor, world championships. And then I would break apart those races into the elements that are required for each race. Meaning, if I wrote down a 300 meter time trial or 200 meter time trial or 100 meter time trial, any time trial sprint, then we know we need to have a good start. We know we need to be able to have good top speed, good acceleration. We need to be able to transition between those stages. And we need to be able to be fit enough to do many repetitions later in the season to where we can get better at the specific skill. So that race can be done. That's categorized as a sprint, and we have all the things that are required for that race in a generalized manner. Then we go on to something like points race, points a limb, for example, on the track. Well, if it's on the track, we know we need to have good turns, which is kind of a given for any sport, whether it be short track, long track, inline, you kind of got to have good turns. You can get away with bad turns with marathons only, but you should really try to find yourself a place where you can practice it a little bit. And that comes into that well-rounded piece that I was talking about earlier. But we know we need good turns for acceleration. That's where most of the magic happens for the acceleration piece that comes into the points. We know we need to be able to have extremely good interval ability, and that can be trained. And we know we need to be able to have race awareness, what's going on around us, how do we interact with other skaters. We know that we need to be able to keep track of points if the coach isn't going to do that. Have some idea of where you are in your points relative to your competitors. And ultimately, acceleration speed is very, very important for that race as well. Being able to maintain off of that can kind of be coupled in there. So you have that list, and you do that for every race. Every race that you want to be good at, or in a sport, for example, if I'm a runner and I'm a marathon runner, I know what the marathon is. It's a pretty easy race to train for in terms of what's going to be expected of you, versus skating, for example, where you have multiple distances and multiple formats, and you don't know what the competitors are doing. And like, when you have a sport like long track, for example, is probably a better example than marathon running. You know exactly what the time trial is going to be. You know how to prepare for that. And so you write down all the things you need to do. And then once you're done, you look across the entire picture and you find as much overlap as you can. And you say, okay, well, if I'm training my top end, I'm going to get benefits in the points of limb, I get benefits in the marathon, I get benefits this. Then you figure out, how closely can I get to actual racing? How close can I get to actual racing without it being too difficult? And something I can do again and again and again at practice. So what I mean by that is, in my opinion, and this might not be the opinion of everybody, every coach or skater, but the best way to train is to race and to do the things exactly that you're trying to get good at. Put yourself in race situations. Now, the reason we don't do that and just race every day is because it's very tiring mentally and physically. It's not something you could just keep up again and again and again and repeat it again and again and again. So we do this clever little thing called compartmentalization, which means breaking things apart into smaller pieces and training each one of those smaller pieces in a way that they will eventually come together to form the entire cake, if you will. And for me, what I see oftentimes is that there's not enough specificity deeper in the season. If I'm looking at one piece of the calendar versus another, there's not enough specificity deeper in the season. It's just kind of the same drills, but a little harder, but no intent to really dive into the little details of what makes a good skater great, or a good runner great, or whatever type of athlete you are. Whatever brings that out of you. There's a certain level of ability to put focus into categories that other people cannot, because you're already good enough as a base to be able to do that. And this is kind of getting into a multi-year progression now, where you have an idea or a task you're trying to accomplish over several years, and you have it all mapped out, which I think is important because you can't do it in one season. But essentially, I'm trying to pay attention so I don't get slammed into by a car. Essentially, in the beginning of any season, you want to broaden the view and try to build a big base. Build the bottom of your pyramid, make it as wide as you possibly can. And there doesn't need to be too much intensity. It needs to be a little bit, because you can't just go stale. But there shouldn't be hyper focus on getting things extremely poppy or fast, or anything that's really required for you to win the race when it's all said and done. That shouldn't be a big focus right now in the beginning of the season. The idea is that your training in the beginning of the season is structured in a way that will support your ability for many specific repetitions later in the season. And that's, for me, the magic, is taking that list of things that you wrote down as a requirement or as being important for racing a specific race, for all your races, and figuring out how to be the best at that, obviously, at the end of the season. That's a given for what the goal is. And where a very skilled program writer comes into play is understanding the training effect that each one of these efforts, each one of these workouts, each one of these written pieces of the program, what the effect is on the body. And once you understand the effect on the body, then you can really do some interesting things with sports science and understand that to get stronger, to get better, you're trying to elicit a response of your endocrine system, that's your hormone system. Essentially, you need your cortisol levels to raise enough to tell your body that it needs to get stronger, but not so high, not so long that you get chronic fatigue. And most of the time, chronic fatigue, we call this overtraining. I don't really like the term overtraining. It's more under-recovering. But most of the time, and not all the time, sometimes programs are just outrageous with no rhyme or reason, and you just go and bury yourself and it sucks. That happens. I've seen it happen before. It's not super common, but it can be a thing. But ultimately, if you're not recovering well from the work you're doing, and you get into the state of training where your cortisol levels just get higher and higher and higher, you'll get to a point where it becomes chronic. You're gonna feel pretty run down, incapable, moody, et cetera, all the things that are associated with overtraining. That's what you'll feel. And you do have a lot of power over that as an athlete. Oftentimes, the athletes will blame the program. And like I said, very seldom is the program just so hard that no amount of recovery can get you back into a level where you need to be, or a place where you need to be for the next workout. Ultimately, it's up to you as an athlete, if your training program is hard, to take it seriously, eat right, sleep right, understand how food affects your body, how rest affects your body, understand what actually happens when your body is repairing itself in terms of the Krebs cycle, how energy is created. All this information is readily available on the internet. You can look it up, and you don't have to know everything scientifically, but understanding that your body needs fresh oxygen or oxygen-rich blood locally to recover will help you make better choices. Then you can start looking up foods that help get oxygen into your blood. You can start looking up processes that will help flush all the bad junk out of your muscles, essentially, without getting too deep into it. You are trying to get the burn out of the legs, which is a buildup of hydrogen ions that need to bond to oxygen, or they can bond to other things as well. That's why we take beta-alanine, for example, is to help flush some of that out. But the more you can understand why your coach is asking you to do those obnoxious things in the recovery process, the more likely you are to actually do them. At least that's how it is for me, was for me. I'm retired now, but I try to educate as much as I can without it being overwhelming. That way you're more likely to buy in, to make good decisions on that. And as a good coach, if there's a coach watching this, it's your job to kind of facilitate that. Be a leader, educate them, empathize, tell them you know it's annoying, but this is part of getting better. part of the process, for example. Oh, I should not have wore a hoodie. I'm dying. So essentially, and I will do a full breakdown video of this where I do like a little classroom session about how I see the process working for writing a program and never wasting any time. That's one thing that really became a core value for me as I got older. If I'm spending time training, I am confident that I couldn't be doing something better and that everything has a purpose and it's all laid out. And there are some times where you need to make changes to your program and have that discussion. But if you do a good enough job planning and you know your body and you know the sport you're writing for well enough, i.e. having a professional coach, for example, then there's a good chance you can get all those pieces into your program. I don't know why I'm going this way. Downtown's that way. Downtown's way more fun. I wonder how fast I can get going down that hill. Oh, I don't want to go all the way back up though. So essentially, to recap one more time, if you're on your own or you're a coach and you're a little lost on what you think you should be doing, the most simple form is to look at a race or the race that you want to be the best at, or what you're training for, and just write down what's required. Look at the race, think about it, and make a list, and then come up with interesting ways that you can get as many reps in to get better as possible in those specific tasks. And the more overlap you have between those tasks, the things you wrote down, the requirements of a race, then the better your training program is going to be, because they spend less energy, or you spend less energy on multiple tasks that are accomplishing a single thing versus a single task or a single rep that accomplishes multiple. So getting good at dividing your time and using your time wisely, and I don't know what I'm doing here. I have a red light, but I don't see any cars coming. There's no cross traffic. Cruising at 30 without doing anything. Oh, the big hill. Say they so. Start there with the things that you think are required. Figure out how to use the drills you know of or create new drills to accomplish the things that you're trying to accomplish. And then what takes a little bit more experience, it isn't just a black or white thing, is being able to piece all that together for a week, a month, a year, several years. And you'll learn, you'll get a pretty good feel for your athletes over time of how they digest the training load, and not every athlete's the same. So when you have a club, it's a little trickier. When you're coaching just one or two, it's a lot easier to specify or create individualized programs, if you will, a bit more. But with a big club, it's a bit harder. You usually, in a club setting, you have your best guy or girl, and the program is for them, and everybody falls in line and does their best. But it can be individualized if you have enough time and experience to do so. But think about those pillars, those core things that are kind of required. And I know this is a generalized thing, as this is kind of supposed to be. There's not too much in-depth information, but if you have questions or this sparked any curiosities, you can drop it in the comments, and when I do the next video about this topic, I can cover it, make sure it's in there to the best of my ability. And hopefully help you understand a little bit more about how to accomplish the goal that you're trying to accomplish without just doing the same mundane things or getting yourself into a slump because there's not enough variation in the program, for example, or there's a lot of pieces to it that can't be covered in a casual clinic. But I do think that the pieces I talked about already, it has to be difficult, challenging, has to be specific enough at the right time. And you have to understand that you're training early in the season or early in the cycle, whether it's the first year of a 4-year or first months of a 12-month, to be able to train harder later. That's very important to understand. And it's not about trying to be insanely good the second, third month, which I think is a given, but not always, perhaps. We're getting super lucky with these greens. But we're not gonna get lucky at the bottom of this hill. Or are we? Oh, we are. Sweet. Got a little green wave there. We didn't even try to. That was nice. I think probably one of the more important parts that I left out now that I think about it is when I say things need to be difficult, within the scope of the plan of where you're going and what you're trying to accomplish. So just doing a random, hard, difficult thing does accomplish the task of growing the part of your brain that essentially is responsible for tenacity. However, again, you're spending energy and time on something less specific that doesn't have good carryover perhaps to where you're going later in the season. So if you can get that difficult workout or difficult drill or whatever it may be, movement, off skates, whatever, to fall as part of a pattern for where you're going, it's so much better than doing a one-off and just riding something randomly hard for a day. Good athletes love to do hard things, and they will definitely work for you if you're a coach. Athletes that are lazy, you have to trick them into doing it by making it fun. You can definitely do both. You can make a lot of difficult things fun if you put your mind to it and just think about how you're structuring your program or the workouts. Make everything a game as much as possible. All right, that's enough about training programs. I feel like I've repeated myself enough. gotta be 15-16% grade. I did flip my wheels over though. I was skating on the sliding edge on my right. I was doing power slides all around because they were beat up. And now they definitely got a lot more bite to them on the better side. Whew. Don't recommend this. Look at me, because I care about the planet. I don't want anybody to say I don't care, all right? I care. Hop over and cruise. Let's see what happens here. Green. I'm ready to get plowed here. It's changing. There we go. I think I got ahead of it. So I can't go too fast because I beat the change. I gotta figure out how to slow down here. Oh, I don't want to go next to this bus because that's always dangerous. And the road just got super shitty. Doesn't last very long. I miss New York because you can do that for 18, 19 blocks at least. Here you get maybe 6. I think they changed that. I was talking to somebody about that. You ain't catching me. Yeah, I talked to somebody about that recently, and they used to all be on timers to be able to hit all the greens in a row, but they changed it at some point in the last little bit. All right, cruise beat, that's a nice bike. Triumph. Couple of British bikes. Sick. I'm back where I started. Did a loop. I also, it's funny, I see comments all the time about me needing to learn how to cross to the right, because I don't usually do it. I have a good, strong cross to the left, even when I'm going on the straightaway, but this way I don't really create a lot of speed that way unless I jump the skate. And the urban flow for sure is more a style of hop the skate this way. And for me, I don't feel like I make any speed that way, so I don't do it. So it's probably cooler looking, but yeah, if I don't feel like I go faster doing something, I usually just don't do it. Style is not my number one priority, as you may have guessed by watching me skate. In terms of like urban environments, I just want to go fast all the time. That's home for me. That's fun. Sometimes it's fun to pop on the sidewalks. Come back off. Give me a green, come on. Nope, can't be too lucky today. .30 kilometers an hour is the speed limit. What is that in miles per hour? 10K, 6, 12, 18 miles an hour. Here we are, 20. I'm legal. Legal-ish, I guess. I like this view the best when I'm skating, actually, over here on this side. This quarter always looks the nicest to me, but it's so hard to hold the camera at that angle and skate. I don't speak French.
What is that?
It's a camera.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello. Happy day now.
Love it. See if we can keep up with some cars here. There's no flow to the greens. It's just literally stop. There we go. We got a couple. Let's see what happens here. Potholes all over the place. Hands getting tired. A lot of times when I'm skating on really rough roads, I don't really double push in the way that I would define what a double push is. I'm just being safe and kind of sitting on a more conservative outer and then just pushing hard to the outer, or to the normal push to the outside, not the outer. But yeah, if I'm really trying to get into it, I'm trying to lean this way and this way. But if the road's bad, I don't trust that, so usually just kind of sit on the outer and then all the luck on the way. You gotta bark back, let them know you care. Ready for the pump track. All right, well, I'm gonna end it here because I'm back in the park. It's close to my house and I'm gonna relax. And yeah, if you have any questions about that ramble of a lesson about training programs and some key pieces I try to incorporate and think about as focus points, let me know. For sure, there's a lot I left out. You can only cover so much when it's unplanned and you just go out and talk to a camera while you're skating. But I'll do a nice full video covering everything that I think is important when it comes to writing a program. And hopefully it'll make you better coaches, better athletes, better everything. Maybe not, maybe I'm crazy. Wouldn't be the first time somebody thought that or I thought that. All right, thanks for watching.